Good morning and welcome to Politique. I would like to thank Mr. Alain Juppe, who is with us this morning, who very rarely grants interviews. He accepted our invitation. So, here's in a nutshell what happened in the past few weeks. Nicolas Sarkozy was elected president. He chose you to be number 2 as a super minister for the ecology. So your Canadian exile and the period of disgrace are long behind. This is like a fresh start. But fate has decided otherwise, or rather the citizens of Bordeaux, in their way of voting for you, wanted to prevent you from escaping your mandate as mayor to dedicate yourself to your ministerial work in Paris. On the evening of the second round of the legislative elections, you are back to being the man whose ambition has been thwarted, like Sisyphus, king of Corinthia, who was condemned to pushing a rock up a hill which keeps falling back. But you are like a phoenix, the bird which emerges from its ashes. And here's the good news after the slap in the face. Your city, Bordeaux, has just been listed as a place of World Cultural Heritage by UNESCO. Isn't this comforting and
it did me some good. It's good for the city of Bordeaux, which welcomed this news with a great deal of pride, I can say. But to be ranked as part of the World Heritage by UNESCO means that, I quote, that we have a universal, exceptional value, and the Bordelais people like their town are proud, and for me it was a form of recognition, because this ranking, this classification, is the history of Bordeaux from generation to generation, which preserved the unity and the beauty and the harmony of our town, and the fantastic transformation which took over place over the last decade.
Yes, indeed. I mean, this is a result of long efforts, as you said. This is to push the modernity of the city. But did you have a feeling of unfairness after what happened because you were defeated in the elections? How do you explain this?
You should never, as I would say, to focus much on that, but you have to understand and reflect. I think there were national factors which came into play, and I was fairly confident after the first round.
You didn't expect
I got
what was going to happen, did you?
13% ahead, and there were national factors which this claimed blue wave, which was supposed to mobilize our electorate. There were other indications. We couldn't explain what the social VAT was. That played a role. But there were local factors, and I think one of the explanations, the main explanations you sketched out in your proposals, the people from Bordeaux didn't understand minister,
they knew that you were going to leave anyway, didn't they?
That destabilized me. I think that since this failure, when I walk in the streets of Bordeaux, I meet the people of the city and say, well done, congratulations, and I'm a bit surprised, but thank you very much, well done for staying, and I think that explains this slight discrepancy.
But how do you explain, to use the words by the former President Jacques Chirac, that the best one of us would trip up?
Because I'm perhaps not the best amongst ourselves. When you don't win, that means you're not the best. These adjectives don't mean anything. I simply try to devote myself with passion to the job of politics. It was my city, it's true. The dream of this great ministry which was an interest in me. I've been preparing for it for a long time, and I have shared the same conviction that the combat for sustainable development is essential. At the same time, I can't do it at a national level. I'm going to do it at a local level. And I'm going to be very much in the forefront of this combat. We've got strong points. We've got the tramway. There's less traffic in the city. Bordeaux has become a big cycle city like Strasbourg. We're very good at managing our green areas. We've got less chemical products around, but we've got progress to make in other fields. So it's a major challenge.
But you have other ambitions, don't you, Mr. Alain Juppe? You're not going to remain mayor of Bordeaux?
Not for the time being. Will you
be a candidate?
I don't know.
In the elections in 2008?
But the Bordelais re-elected me on the 8th of October last with 56% of votes. So that was very important for me, it must be said. So I'm going to end this mandate, and I'll see next year if the conditions right to be a candidate. I haven't taken decisions yet.
Are you not tempted by Venice?
The Temptation of Bordeaux, perhaps.
And a book, maybe?
Well, as you're saying, I need to think about it. I'm undergoing some suffering. It was slightly violent. In a few seconds, everything I had hoped for and everything I had built for had collapsed. There's worse than this. I don't want to have a pity party when somebody close to you is affected by major illness. It's suffering. But it's not pointless that I reflect on that. I write on it.
Your reaction was violent in a way, but I think people understood that.
Yes.
People understood you.
I don't think I had a violent reaction.
Because you said that you said to some journalists you would like to see me die.
My remarks were well received. Okay, I lost. I congratulate my opponents. Of course, I will present my resignation to the president, which I did the day after. I think my remarks were I was serene the morning after, and when I was under some sort of physical pressure. There were moments where you crack. Everyone's human. What's paradoxical is when you try to protect yourself, then you're reproached for being too hard. I think I had the impression the questions being put to me were hard, not my reactions. My reactions were quite human. Somebody who was not feeling very well.
You often say, don't you, that your image, what you are, or what you feel is not exactly
it's true what I personally
what
think,
shows.
but it's for others to judge. I like to say to my colleagues from the Southwest who ask me this, when I see the portraits painted by the specialists of the press of myself, I like to say quite clear, it is not me. You need to know, I'm used to it. In the databanks, when you press on Juppe, you've got Amstrad right in his shoes as a caricature, and I don't think it is exactly me.
Aren't you trying to change the image?
Well, with people who know me and people who work with me, I've got many links to the 18th arrondissement where I was as a parliamentarian in Bordeaux. The people who know me and work with me don't have this image of me. What is important is the image the people have of me who have known me.
I mean, any
It's true.
politician or public person has an image.
Assume it. You need to make efforts, however.
Mr. François Fillon gave a speech at the former assembly. That might be another stereotype. Everybody actually is saying that he is useless as a prime minister because he's in the shade of Nicolas Sarkozy.
Wow.
But this is no surprise, is it? Of course.
You're
It's
right.
normal, isn't
it's
it?
quite normal today. We have a new sequence in French political life because of the 5-year mandate, a presidential election, and then general elections where there's a new government with a prime minister. Who is commanding this process? It's the presidential election. Could one imagine that François Fillon yesterday say things different from what the President of the Republic was saying, which have been validated during the presidential election? This reproach of being in the shadow of the program Sarkozy is an absurd reproach. I think is that what we were expecting from him. He is in control. He was very convincing, and I think his role is not secondary. The President of the Republic needs somebody by his side who is head of running things, who is running the government, because the government is a difficult task.
But you had more leeway than he has when you were prime
because I was
minister.
in a different context. It was the 7-year mandate. The President of the Republic had a different role. He was the arbiter, and the government at the time was very much in the front line. But times have changed, and I think we need to move with our institutions.
Now, will he get back to being the real prime minister as a
that's
trigger
contrary
of things?
to what has been said. That is true. Yes, I think of it. I was a fuse, but the electors made the fuses jump. And it's quite normal, of course.
Some have criticized this so-called relaunching of France, that is going to cost 15 billion. Is it
our
a good thing?
objective is to regain a point of growth. France is at around 2%. If we want to create jobs, if we want to rebalance our public accounts, it's not by inflicting difficulties on us, it's redynamizing growth, and the tax measures which are included here in this tax package seem to be relevant. There's a dynamic vision of things.
But how can one do that? How can one balance out the financing?
If
going to be enough
we
money
don't
to do
take
so?
any bet or any risk, well, we'll remain on downward trend. So there's a bet, there's a challenge, we need to be confident, and it can be effective.
François Fillon often quotes you because, well, in his book, because when you went to Canada, you saw France from afar, and you said France is going through a nervous breakdown, between inverted commas. Do you have the feeling that Nicolas Sarkozy and François Fillon are going to pull France out of this?
I don't have the feeling that they're going to get them out of it. They're going to get them out. Yes, I believe that, and that was the merit of the presidential campaign, the way in which Sarkozy conducted it, this nervous depression, this breakdown, which I analysed in book, which prompted me to say, when we look at the objective factors, France is a formidable country, we've got extraordinary assets, but in our minds there is a collective depression. I think there's a change, there's a feeling of confidence which has returned, there's a major expectations, it's still there, and I think the action of the government will enable us to meet these expectations. That's why I'm talking of growth, because growth essentially is the change of individual behaviours. It's consumption, it's investment. These things can't be simply measured in national canton. They take place in people's heads.
Now, the special tax on polluting trucks is something new. It's being tested in the region of Alsace. Is this satisfactory to you?
You know, I launched, following the request of the President of the Republic and the Prime Minister, this Grenelle of the environment, and which is being pursued by Jean-Louis Borloo. And amongst the issues was the issue of transport. How do we favour what we call how do we get less lorries on the road? When you go to Bordeaux-Dandaï, there's a wall of lorries. It's unbearable. So we had transfer some of this road transport to rail transport. So we need to reform rail transport, and we need to re-establish equality of competition with lorries. So there's a tax on lorries, as we're doing in Alsace. Why are we doing in Alsace? Because the Germans did it.
Did you come up with this idea originally?
It was on the agenda of the Grenelle programme. We need to look into it. We need to discuss it with road transporters. We have to see how not to penalise small craftsmen on the roads. But the heavy lorry traffic is participating in the maintenance of our infrastructure. I think this is something which needs to be part of overall policy. We need to boost, if I can say so, maritime transport. Something which always strikes me is the red wine from Bordeaux always leaves on ships. So we know that rail transport is much less polluting.
Something else now. Alain Juppe, you will often call the French Al Gore. Now you have this awareness that came to you, the awareness of ecology, and this increase during your stay in Canada. Do you have the feeling that your successor, Jean-Louis Borloo, has the same awareness?
Yes, I think so. I think, of course, yes, he will. This large ministry which was created will be a form of motivation for him. And I think what is important, what explains my own development, is not simply a fad. It's the change in public opinion. And it's absolutely striking. I see in Bordeaux there is an expectation in all opinion polls. In Bordeaux there was an impatience in the centre of town because the system wasn't completely set up. We were behind. So in the construction today, when you want to build a house, increasingly you ask your architect or your construction company to build a house with passive energy, as we say, which is capable of providing the energy that it needs itself. This change has taken place in the mindset, And as I said earlier, I won't be able to do it at a national level. I hope, because Bordeaux is twinned with Los Angeles, to see what is happening in California, which was one of the most states which most involved in this.
Right, now, a question on foreign policy. Le Monde, the daily Le Monde, published the archives of the Élysée Palace on the drama in Rwanda. When you were foreign minister, what do you know about how genocide is prepared?
Everything which was known in reality. I think I like to say what I said before, the inquiry commission which investigated this was the way that France reacted. Firstly, as of 1993, because I became head of the French diplomacy, we tried to reconcile everything, and that led to the Chateau agreements. And then, as of April 1994, when the risk of genocide became quite clear, by trying to mobilize the international community, and this was at France's honor, only France reacted. The United Nations, the Security Council, completely blocked during this period. And France set up the operation, and it was to the honor of our country.
No, wasn't this a pitfall or a trap for the French army?
Because the Prime Minister at the time, Alain Juppe, there were strictly humanitarian objectives. It took place as part of an international mandate. We went to the Security Council, Balladur and myself, to get the green light, and we got unanimity, and then we were limited in time. And the Secretary General of the United Nations wanted us to remain because the United Nations itself couldn't really take over in the sufficient time frame. So to accuse France of not doing well does not have any meaning. There were maybe a few mistakes or errors, but after that period, things were very much. France did very well.
Very short question. You met with the mayor, the woman mayor of Ramallah, and a journalist of the BBC was just freed, Alan Johnston. How do you feel about that? What's your reaction?
I'm delighted about him being freed, and I'm glad to see he's in good health, but the situation is completely blocked. We're trying modestly to do things.
What about the shifting towards extremism?
That's the reason why it's good news. What we're trying to do. You're talking about Ramallah. I was at Ramallah a few months ago. The mayor of Ramallah came to Bordeaux. We're trying to develop cooperation, triangular accommodation. We're twinned with an Israeli town, Ashdod. We're trying to twin with Ramallah as well. It's a triple twinning. It's a small contribution to the only path which is possible, that of political negotiation and peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alain Juppe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being our guest on the Set of Politique, and good luck to you. Thank you very much.